Chapter 9. The Return to Normalcy. The contest hall was eerily quiet now, a stark contrast to the roaring applause from earlier. Most of the audience had long since filtered out, and the once dazzling stage lights had dimmed, leaving only a faint glow from a few overhead fixtures. Backstage, the air hung heavy with the smell of makeup, hairspray and faint traces of confetti that had been scattered during the earlier performances. Ash sat slumped on a bench in the dressing room, still clad in May's bright orange outfit. The matching skirt, boots and bandana felt less like clothing and more like battle armor that he'd somehow survived wearing. In his hands, he clutched the shimmering blue and gold contest ribbon, his fingers brushing over its delicate embroidery. His heart was still pounding from the adrenaline of the routine, but an overwhelming sense of relief had started to settle in. "I can't believe it's finally over," Ash muttered, leaning back against the wall, his head tilting up to stare at the ceiling. "I actually survived." Max's voice cut through the moment like a well-placed jab. "Yeah, and you managed to do it without falling on your face. Honestly, I'm impressed." Ash rolled his head to the side, narrowing his eyes at Max, who was leaning casually against the doorframe, arms crossed and his signature smirk firmly in place. "Thanks for the vote of confidence, Max." "Really? Your support has been so inspiring." "Hey, I'm just saying," Max replied, shrugging. "You actually surprised me. I thought for sure we'd be hauling you off stage after some spectacular wipeout involving those heels." He grinned, clearly enjoying himself. "But instead, you didn't just pull it off, you nailed it. The crowd loved you." "Well, May," Ash groaned, running a hand through the itchy brown wig that had been glued to his head for what felt like an eternity. "Don't remind me," he muttered. "If I hear one more person call me May, I swear I'm going to lose it." Max's grin widened. "Relax, May. You're safe now. No one's going to make you do an encore." Ash grabbed a nearby cushion and launched it at him. Max ducked easily, laughing as the pillow harmlessly hit the wall. Before Ash could formulate a proper comeback, Brock walked into the room, carrying a small canvas bag that jingled faintly with the sound of glass vials clinking together. "All right, Ash," Brock said, his tone calm and matter-of-fact. "You've got one last thing to do before we can officially call it a day." Ash raised an eyebrow, sitting up straighter. "What's that?" "Please tell me it's not another costume change." Brock pulled a small glass vial from the bag, the liquid inside a bright, shimmering blue that caught the light. "This," Brock said, holding it up like a prize, "is the antidote. Once you drink it, you'll go back to being yourself. No more, May." Ash stared at the vial like it was a lifeline, his shoulders sagging in relief. "Finally," he said, reaching for it. "I can't wait to get out of this outfit. These boots have been killing me all day. My toes feel like they've been in a battle of their own." Max snorted, pushing off the doorframe to step closer. "Come on, admit it. You're going to miss the skirt. It suits you." Ash shot him a glare so sharp it could have cut through steel. "Not a chance." "Really?" Max pressed, grinning devilishly. "I mean, you looked great out there. The crowd wouldn't stop cheering. I'm pretty sure someone in the front row was crying tears of joy." Ash groaned, pressing the ribbon to his face like it could somehow block out Max's voice. "Why do I even talk to you?" "All right." "Enough joking around," Brock said, stepping between them before Ash could chuck another cushion. "Let's get this done." He handed the vial to Ash, his expression softening. "You did good, Ash." "Really?" "May's going to be proud when she hears about this." Ash took the vial, holding it carefully in his hand. Up close, the liquid shimmered like liquid starlight, and the faint scent of mint wafted up from the uncorked top. He glanced at his reflection in the nearby vanity mirror, the glass slightly smudged but still clear enough to see May's face staring back at him. The sight stopped him for a moment. The bright blue eyes, the cheerful smile, the confident stance. It was all May. It was strange, seeing her instead of himself, but at the same time, it reminded him of everything he'd done to make this crazy plan work. "This is for you, May," Ash murmured softly, his voice just loud enough for Brock and Max to hear. Max tilted his head, his smirk faltering for once. All right, he said, waving a hand. "Don't get all sentimental on us. Just drink the thing before you start giving a speech." Ash rolled his eyes, but couldn't help a small grin. "Fine. Dr. Hideo, Tornate Konda, Yendinel Pal, Ain, Tocho. Here goes nothing." He tilted the vial back and downed the liquid in one gulp. The minty taste was surprisingly refreshing, though it was quickly followed by a weird tingling sensation that spread from his throat to the rest of his body. For a brief moment, he felt like he'd been zapped by one of Pikachu's weaker thunderbolts. Not painful, but definitely noticeable. "Whoa," Ash muttered, shaking his head as the sensation faded. "That was weird." Brock stepped closer, inspecting him carefully. "Looks like it's working. Your face is already changing back." Ash turned back to the mirror, watching as May's delicate features slowly faded away, replaced by his own familiar, slightly scruffy face. His shoulders relaxed as the transformation completed, and he let out a long breath. "Finally," he said, running a hand over his now short black hair. "I'm me again." "Oh," Max said, with mock disappointment. "I was just starting to get used to calling you May." Ash grabbed another pillow and hurled it at him. Pikachu, who had been sitting quietly on the side, leapt onto Ash's shoulder with a cheerful Pika. Ash chuckled, scratching behind Pikachu's ears. "Good to see you recognize me, buddy." Brock packed up the empty vial, giving Ash a nod. "All done. Let's get out of here. I think we all earned a good meal after today." Ash stood, stretching his arms over his head. "You're telling me. But first, someone help me get out of this outfit. If I have to spend one more second in this skirt, I'm going to lose it." Max grinned. "I don't know, Ash. I think you should keep it. You might need it for the next contest." Ash sighed dramatically. "I'm ignoring you now." The three of them burst into laughter as they gathered their things and headed out, leaving the dressing room and May's outfit behind. The transformation back was just as strange as the first one, but thankfully, this time it was much faster. A warm, almost fizzy sensation rippled through Ash's body, starting at his toes and working its way up like he'd just stepped into a hot bath. He stood still, watching as his legs lengthened, his arms grew stronger, and his shoulders broadened back to their usual shape. "Whoa," Ash muttered, glancing down at his hands as they tingled. His fingers stretched back to their normal size, the smoothness of May's hands replaced by his usual calloused ones, earned from countless hours of training, battles, and gripping Pokeballs. His face tingled next, like 1,000 tiny pins and needles, and he reached up instinctively to touch his cheek. Relief flooded through him as his fingers brushed against his familiar jawline. "Finally," he breathed, running his hand along his face just to make sure. "That's more like it." Ash's clothes began to shimmer and shift, the orange top and blue skirt dissolving into tiny, flickering sparks. Within seconds they morphed into his trusty jacket, jeans, and sneakers. His familiar red and white cap materialized atop his head, feeling like it belonged there all along. He flexed his fingers, rolled his shoulders, and stretched his arms high above his head, savoring the comforting feel of his usual outfit. "Ah, finally," he said, letting out a satisfied sigh. "I feel like myself again." Pikachu, who had been perched quietly on a nearby crate, leapt onto Ash's shoulder in one smooth motion. It nuzzled against his cheek with a cheerful Pika. "Pied." Ash grinned, reaching up to scratch behind Pikachu's ears. "Good to have you back, buddy," he said. "I think you were starting to get confused about who I was." Pikachu let out a happy squeak, its tail twitching in agreement. Max, who had been leaning against the wall with his arms folded, pushed off and took a step closer. He gave Ash a once-over, nodding as if inspecting his work. "Well, you're definitely back to normal," he said, with mock seriousness. "No more high-pitched voice, no more twirling, and thankfully, no more skirt. I think we can all agree the world's a better place now." "Hey." "Ow," Ash protested, turning to face him. "I worked hard on those moves. You saw how the crowd reacted. They loved it." He crossed his arms, puffing out his chest a little. "I was graceful." Max raised an eyebrow, his smirk growing wider by the second. "Graceful, huh? Sure. Win. Let's go with that. Personally, I'd call it weirdly graceful, but whatever helps you sleep at night." "Weirdly graceful. Diao. Weirdly." Ash repeated, his tone incredulous. "You've got to be kidding me." "I nailed that routine." "Yeah," Max said, barely holding back a laugh, and it was hilarious to watch. "You spinning in heels? That was comedy gold. You're lucky I didn't record it." Ash threw up his hands in exasperation. "Unbelievable. I save the day, win the ribbon, and all I get is this guy making jokes." Brock, who had been quietly observing from the side, finally stepped forward, clapping Ash on the back with a grin. "Don't listen to him, Ash. You did great out there. May's going to be proud of you when she hears about this." Ash's expression softened, his earlier annoyance fading. "Ah. Thanks, Brock," he said, tucking the ribbon into his pocket. "I just hope she's feeling better." This was all for her, after all. Max leaned casually against a nearby bench. Yeah, it was for May. But don't act like you didn't enjoy it just a little. I saw you out there. You were actually having fun." Ash turned to Max, one eyebrow raised. "Fun? Fun? You call sweating through a wig, wobbling in heels, and wearing a skirt fun?" Max shrugged. "Hey, the crowd loved it. And admit it, you kind of liked the attention." Ash was about to fire back when Brock stepped between them, holding up his hands like a referee. "All right, that's enough, you two," he said, though there was a faint smile tugging at his lips. "We've got things to do." Speaking of which, he hefted his bag over his shoulder. "We should head back to the hospital. May's probably waiting for us, and she's going to want to hear everything." Ash nodded, his expression turning serious for a moment. "Yeah. Let's go." As they headed toward the exit, Ash glanced down at the ribbon in his pocket. For all the teasing and chaos, he couldn't help but feel a small swell of pride. May had trusted him with something important, and he'd delivered. Pikachu gave his cheek another affectionate nuzzle, and Ash grinned. "All right, buddy," he said. "Let's get this over with before Max starts asking me to do an encore." Max, walking slightly ahead of them, turned around with a smirk. "Oh, don't tempt me. I bet we could sell tickets." "Max." Ash groaned, picking up his pace. Brock laughed as he followed behind, shaking his head. "Just another day with you two." The three of them headed out of the contest hall. Pikachu perched happily on Ash's shoulder, the ribbon safely tucked away and the teasing still going strong. The hospital room was quiet, and filled with a soft glow from the setting sun streaming through the window. The faint hum of machines and the distant chatter of nurses in the hallway were the only sounds as Ash, Brock, Max and Pikachu stepped inside. May was sitting up in bed, her chestnut hair cascading loosely over her shoulders. She looked worlds better than she had just a few days ago. Her cheeks were no longer pale, her usual energy had returned to her sparkling blue eyes, and her smile was as bright as ever. "May, Tile, tea," Max exclaimed, darting into the room ahead of the others. "You're looking way better." "I'm Max," May replied, her face lighting up as she opened her arms for a hug. She wrapped her little brother in a tight squeeze, laughing softly. "Yeah, The doctors said I should be back to normal soon. I feel so much better already. Brock followed close behind, placing a small bouquet of flowers on the table beside her. That's great to hear, May. You had us all worried. She smiled warmly at him. Thanks, Brock. And thanks for the flowers, they're beautiful. Pikachu hopped onto the bed, chirping happily as it nuzzled against May's arm. Pikachu, Ki. Oh, I missed you too, Pikachu, May said, scratching under its chin. I bet you've been keeping these guys in line while I've been stuck here, huh? Die fine wine, Max said with a smirk, leaning casually against the edge of the bed. Brock chuckled, but his tone grew more serious. Actually, May, we've got some good news for you. Something you're going to want to hear. May tilted her head, her eyebrows knitting together in curiosity. Good news. What happened? Ash, who had been lingering awkwardly near the door, finally stepped forward, his hands buried in his pockets. He pulled out the ribbon he'd won earlier, its blue and gold embroidery gleaming as it caught the fading sunlight. Holding it up, he grinned. You won. May froze, her eyes widening as she stared at the ribbon. Wait, what? You mean the contest? Ash nodded, his grin widening. Yep. You couldn't compete. So I kind of filled in for you. You know, just for a little while. For a moment, May simply blinked at him, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to process what he'd just said. Then, out of nowhere, she burst into laughter. A bright, genuine laugh that filled the room and made Ash's face flush bright red. You, she said between laughs, clutching her stomach. As me? I can't believe it. Max grinned and jumped in before Ash could respond. Oh, it was amazing. You should have seen him wobbling around in your boots. And the skirt? Priceless. Max, don't. Ash snapped, his face somehow turning even redder. May was practically in tears now, her laughter echoing off the walls. Oh my gosh, I wish I could have seen that. Ash in a skirt? That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Yeah, laugh it up, Ash grumbled, crossing his arms but unable to stop a small smile from creeping onto his face. It wasn't easy, you know. I had to learn how to walk in those boots, talk like you, and even, wear your outfit. May wiped a tear from the corner of her eye, her laughter finally subsiding. I can't believe you actually did that for me, she said, her voice softening. You, of all people, pretending to be me? That's wow. Ash shrugged, scratching the back of his neck. I just didn't want you to miss out on the contest. I know how much it means to you. May's expression grew tender as she reached out to take the ribbon from him. She held it delicately, running her fingers over the shimmering threads. Thank you, Ash, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You have no idea how much this means to me. Ash smiled awkwardly, rubbing the back of his head. You've done the same for me. May's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but her smile didn't waver. Still, I owe you one. Big time. Actually, Max piped up, his smirk returning. You owe all of us. I had to put up with Ash falling over in heels for days. Hey, Ash protested, pointing an accusatory finger at Max Segal. I got the hang of it eventually. Sure, Max said, rolling his eyes. If by eventually, you mean after the 10th time you almost face-planted. May burst into laughter again, and even Brock couldn't keep a straight face. I have to admit, Brock said, chuckling. It was pretty entertaining watching you try to spin without tripping. But, credit where it's due, you pulled it off. Thanks, I guess, Ash said, though he couldn't help grinning. The room was filled with laughter, as Max eagerly recounted all the highlights of Ash's transformation and performance. May couldn't stop giggling as he described Ash's attempts to mimic her voice, complete with exaggerated hand gestures, and even Brock joined in with a few teasing remarks about Ash's unique coordination. All right, Ash finally said, waving his hands to stop them. Enough about me in heels, okay? Can we focus on the fact that I won the contest? May, still smiling, held the ribbon close to her chest. You're right. I can't thank you enough, Ash. This means everything to me. Brock smiled warmly. And now you can focus on getting better so you're ready for the next contest. We'll all be there to cheer you on. Ash nodded. Yeah. And if you ever need a stand-in again. May shook her head quickly, laughing. No offense, Ash, but I think I'll handle it myself from now on. Fair enough, Ash said, chuckling. As the conversation shifted to lighter topics, the group settled into a comfortable rhythm, the room filled with laughter and teasing. Outside, the sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. May held the ribbon tightly, her heart full of gratitude as she looked around at her friends. For the first time in days, she felt like everything was going to be okay. And for Ash, while he was more than happy to leave the skirt and heels behind, he couldn't help but feel a small spark of pride. It had been crazy, ridiculous, and completely out of his comfort zone. But seeing May smile like that, totally worth it.